We just set another stock rocket. You saw that, right? The stock market just hit another all-time in history high.
Trump never misses an opportunity to tout the economy as one of his biggest achievements, and it makes sense. He has consistently strong approval ratings for his handling of the economy amid the longest economic expansion in U.S. history and a series of record low unemployment figures. But if you scratch the surface, both in the polling and the data, the economy actually doesn't look so great. In a poll released earlier this month, most people said they are not better off financially under the Trump economy. Inequality keeps growing, with census figures showing the highest level of inequality in more than 50 years. And working people, even in what's meant to be a really hot economy, are struggling to buy the basics of a middle-class life. The Wall Street Journal last month reported that even buying a car, a necessity for daily life in almost all of the country, is now out of reach for many. Here to dig through what's really happening in the economy under Trump and what that can mean for 2020, I'm joined by Betsy Stevenson, a former member of the President's Council of Economic Advisors, the former chief economist for the Department of Labor, and Mark Zandi, former economic advisor, Republican presidential candidate John McCain, and the chief economist of Moody's Analytics. Betsy, it seems to me that there's sort of these two questions, right? Cyclical questions and structural ones. And for a while, we've had we had the worst financial crisis in 60 years and this long period to climb out of the problem cyclically. And now we're in this economy that should be running very hot, right? With very low unemployment, low inflation as well. And it just seems to me like we're up against some structural boundaries about whether like working people and middle class families are seeing real tangible gains even in this kind of economy. What do you see?
Right. So I think what we've seen is we've recovered from the Great Recession, but we've got the same kind of problems we've had for a while, which is rising inequality in the United States. And that rising inequality means that as the economy improves, as incomes grow, they primarily go to the top end of the income distribution. So we've been watching this happen for a while. But I think that on top of that, what we just saw in 2018 was a slowdown in wage growth compared to what we had seen in the 2013 to 2017 period. And that wage growth, median wages in some parts of the country didn't move at all last year. And that particularly means that, families at the bottom are struggling. And while wages aren't growing, we're also seeing the uninsured rate going up. So the last couple of years, the number of people without insurance has been increasing. Childcare costs are rising. And people don't have access to paid leave. And I just want to put this together for you and say, what do we see? We see a strong economy where people aren't having children. It's very unusual to see the birth rate decline, and that's what we're seeing.
Mark, it's interesting. I know you've been an advisor for several Republican candidates through the years. And, to oversimplify, I think that Republicans often sort of talk about growth. They talk about supply side issues and the flow of capital. And Democrats tend to talk about these distributional questions a lot, oversimplifying. But you were nodding your head a lot as Betsy was telling that sort of distributional story about where income is going.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. I mean, the Federal Reserve did a really great survey earlier in the year. And what they found was that 40% of American households don't have enough cash to cover an emergency. And they defined an emergency as something that would cost $400. So 40% of Americans didn't have that cash in the bank. They'd either have to borrow it from a friend or on a credit card, or they couldn't pay it at all. So, I think that makes the point very strongly that despite the headline good economic news, it really has not filtered down yet to many, many working class Americans.
So Betsy's point about the median income, which is unchanged between 2017 and 2018, so for me, Betsy, and I want to get your responses to Mark, there's a question here about what's wrong with the models, right? Because it should be the case that when you run an economy at full employment for a few years in a row, you should see wage gains, right? When you have a high demand for labor and when the labor supply has sort of all come online, as far as we know, a lot of it has come online, that wages should be going up. They're not going up. Something is wrong here.
I think that's right. Something is wrong. And I don't think there's one simple answer to what's wrong. But, what we are seeing increasing demand for workers, but that isn't translating to workers being able to demand better conditions on the job, including higher wages. And that link that gives workers more bargaining power just seems to be broken.
What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I don't think the models are broken. I mean, I think, if you roll this back a year ago, we were on track to seeing a very strong economy lower unemployment. Wage growth was picking up, particularly at the low end. Of course, minimum wage hikes really did help there.
Good point.
But then we had the trade war, and the trade war has done very serious damage to the economy. And in fact, if the president decides to continue to pursue the trade war, recession risks will rise. And in fact, that I think he's connecting the dots between the trade war, the economy, and his reelection, and he'll probably figure out some way to come to some kind of face-saving arrangement with the Chinese. But if he doesn't, then the economy is really going to struggle, and recession risks are going to be very high. So I don't think the models are broken. We were nearly there. We just got sidetracked by really bad economic policy.
What do you think about that? I've heard that from a lot of folks about the trade war sort of coming in and knocking us off course. What do you think of that, Betsy?
I think that certainly explains why we've seen wage growth slow, and I think that that's a real risk to the economy. But, the rising inequality is a deeper, longer phenomenon in the United States, and I don't think we were nearly there in terms of fixing that problem. What we've seen is an era in which we cut tax rates enormously to the top, and the only thing that's done is redistributed income back towards the top. So I think we do need to sort of rethink what is a society that's going to deliver more equality look like, and what are the kinds of policies we need to have that happen, because we don't have those right now. So I don't think that's just going to turn around tomorrow. Yeah,
that's a great point, Betsy. That was great. Both of you, Betsy, Stephen, Mark Zandi. Come back. Let's do this again soon. I really, really like that. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.